All right, now we're going to look at radians and degrees, and we're going to use this in our next couple of videos about trigonometry. So this one's kind of quick. Radians are just another unit of measure, okay? So we're used to, when we're talking about angles, using degrees, but radians we also use to describe angles, right? So we have this main equivalence that we use to figure out all of our radians and degree measures. So pi radians is equivalent to 180 degrees. So that's a big equivalence. So if I want to switch back and forth, if I want degrees, then I take my radians, and what we're going to do is multiply by 1, because if I multiply by 1, I don't change anything, right? Like 7 times 1 is still 7. So if I want to multiply by 1, I can write any number as 1 as long as I put it on top of itself, right? Like for example, we can say 7 over 7, that equals 1. Okay, so as long as I have the same number on top and on bottom, it'll simplify to 1. So I'm going to multiply by a fraction. Okay, and I'm going to put the same thing on top and bottom. That same thing that I'm going to put on top and bottom is the pi and the 180, because they're the same. They're equivalent. It's just two different units of measure. That's like putting 1 foot over 12 inches. They're equivalent. It's just different units. So if I'm given radians and I want to get to degrees, I'm going to take the radians times 180 over pi. All right, if I want to go from degrees to radians, I flip that, and I'm going to multiply by pi over 180. So that's the big gist of it, right? There's so much more we could talk about, but just to get the idea, you're going to take degrees times pi over 180, and you're going to take radians times 180 over pi. Okay, so for the first one, right, I have 200 degrees, and I want to know how many radians that is. I want to change units here. I want to convert it. So I'm going to take 200 degrees, right here, times pi over 180. Now, to help you remember which one you use, that's pi radians over 180 degrees. The reason I want 180 on the bottom is because I want my degrees to cancel. All right, so whenever you want to get rid of degrees, you put the 180 on the bottom. All right, and then here we can use our calculator if we wanted to, or we can simplify by hand, right? We can do that. So I have 200 pi over 180. All right, any trailing zeros can cancel out. It's like dividing by 10. So then I just need to simplify 20 over 18. Well, 2 goes into both of those, so that's going to leave me with 10 pi over 9. So 200 degrees is equivalent to 10 pi over 9 radians. All right, the second one, I have a negative 420. You can have negative angles, right? We're not going to get too big into sketching angles and stuff, but just know that you can have a negative, all right? And our angles can be, as big as you want them to be, all right? There's no limit on how big an angle can be, all right? So this negative 420, I want to get rid of degrees, so I'm going to multiply by pi over 180, right? Remember, you want the degrees to cancel. Okay, so now for this one, I am going to show you if you have a calculator, maybe. There you go. I'm going to show you, get rid of that glare, how to type this in without having to do it in your head. I'll do it all for you. So what was this one? 420 over 180. That's a fraction that I want to simplify. So I'm going to do 420 divided by 180. It's going to give me a decimal. And I'm going to go to math, enter, enter. And there's my simplest fraction, 7 over 3. All right, so that means this one is going to be negative. And then I got 7 pi over 3. Okay, pi is always going to be in the numerator when we're switching to radians. All right, now for the next one, I got radians. Anytime I don't have that degree or I'm working with pi, now sometimes on rare occasion there won't be a pi, but usually when we're working with radians there is a pi. So that tells you that these are in radian form. So that means I want degrees. So instead of putting the degrees on the bottom, I put it up top because that's what I want. And I want my pi's to cancel. So that's why I put the pi on the bottom. But remember, this is 1 because it's the same thing on top and on bottom. All right, and then we just multiply. Okay, so this one I'm going to do in the head. The next one we'll do with the calculator. To make it a little easier, I'm going to go ahead and divide by 6 because I know 180 divided by 6 is 30. Then I can do 30 times 11, which is 330. So 11 pi over 6 is 330 degrees. And then for the last one, another negative, so I'm going to have a negative answer. I got 7 pi over 30. So we're going to do 180 over pi so that my pi's cancel out. Okay, and then this one, we'll use a calculator. No big deal. So we got 7 times 180, and then divide that by 30. So we get 42 degrees. A negative 42 degrees. All right. Now, another quick way, right, if this makes sense, if it doesn't, stick with our formulas here, but another way of doing it, okay, if I want to change from degrees to radians, I basically want to look at how many pi's there are. So that means I want to take this number and divide it by 180 and slap a pi in there, right, which is what we're doing anyways. But the easier way, or the one that works a little easier that way, is that I'm replacing this pi with 180 degrees. So in other words, I'm going to do 11 times 180 divided by 6. And again, that's what we're doing in the long run, but that's just kind of a shorter way of thinking about it. Anytime I have a pi, I'm just going to pull it out and put a 180 in there and simplify. Okay, so radians to degrees.